to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting with me, your host, Neal. I'm here at Field & Main Restaurant, of course, on this beautiful, glorious, sun-filled summer evening, and it's been a wine day. We've got a couple of guests in house. I've got a chance to connect with John Everson of Springlot Vineyard, and I got a chance to celebrate the 75th birthday of Bill Hatch, who usually is watching this chat from his home, but is actually here at the restaurant this evening. And Bill and his family runs F&I Vineyards up in Loudoun County. Wonderful folks, great place to visit and great wines to enjoy. So already in the mood for wine, tasted a bunch of other wines today too. So capping off the night with you and this wonderful wine. So if you're joining us this evening, please do let me know. And we'll begin to kind of evaluate this little number here, which it's saying quite a bit already. How neat. Dean, good evening. How are you, sir? Pleasure to have you with us. Pretty expressive wine. It has some recognizable characteristics jumping right out of the glass. I'm getting ahead of myself. But Greg, how are you, sir? Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Julie shared some comments with me about some future suggestions you offered her, which is really great. We're always looking for suggestions about what wines to include, just so you guys all know, right? It's Julie picks these wines typically, and she's picking them, months in advance. Like we have kind of a docket of wines as we're tasting through them that she might star or flag for this purpose. And she's got, of course, 4 months usually available on site, and then has a number of other wines sort of teed up to go after that. So putting a wine in the mix helps. When I say something like, when I see a wine or we taste a wine together and I say, I think this will be beautiful in the mystery context, if we tasted a Carignan today, there's a chance that it won't even show up for another year. And so that allows her to keep me on my toes and I not to know exactly what's coming. Rob and Kathy, good evening. Dan and Veronica, wonderful to have you with us. Karen, hello. And the Sanders with Mike Taylor. Oh, Mike, good evening, sir. How are you? And Sarah, you're up in Pennsylvania, of course, with the crew, I hope, with everybody watching along. Cheers to everyone up that way. Jennifer and Anna, Serendipity Equine, thank you. And some other barn moms might join you shortly. That's awesome. Thank you. A little break from tending to the horses and having a little glass of wine, that doesn't hurt, especially when we get to work on this. Many thanks, Greg, to the congratulations for the umami win. Yes, we were just floored. We were floored to be in the competition. We're not exactly kind of the center point of Northern Virginia. So whenever we get a nod from Northern Virginia Magazine, we're grateful. And having us recognized and even in that competition to begin with at all was special. And then making it past the first round, we got to the second round and there was 5 guys. And we were thinking, well, I guess this road ends here. And then we beat that thanks to all of you and all of your support. It's been spectacular. So the response from people who've never heard of us on their way visiting out this way has been great. And then our ability to leverage that with your continued support to raise some money for the food bank was just the cherry on top of all of it, or the bacon jam on top of the burger. So Taylor Stratton, sorry, it's Johnny's laptop acting up. I got you. Okay, well, welcome. Can't wait to try the wine either. This is one of those wines, right, when we've talked about these before, where, as Candy, Kevin, and Ryan have with us many times before, welcome, where right off the bat, you pour the wine in the glass and it's expressive. It's saying something, and that something sometimes leads you exactly where you should go. And other times it might lead you astray. And we've talked about this many times before, that you shouldn't walk away from that first impression and discount it completely because you're going to work the process of the deductive kind of evaluation. But equally, you shouldn't also just latch onto that. So make note of it. So what do you smell right off the bat? What was your first thought of what this wine could be? Think about that, put a pin in it, and then you use that as a reference point toward the end when you're like, well, I thought about this in the initial phases. I want to make sure I consider that, but not necessarily get in a tractor beam, where certainly people who are more novice in tasting kind of get stuck in that tractor beam. And it happens to people who have more experience too. But when you're more practiced, you can kind of break away from it. But it's exciting to think, oh my God, I know what this is. So I'm not sure I know, but it has a lot of characteristics that tell me things. And so we're going to get into this wine. Before we do, I wanted to share with all of you, I was given a tip was it maybe last week by a guest. I think it was on Sunday night. Actually, it was Ike Broadus from Old Busthead Brewery. He gave me a wine tip, if you will. He was watching a fantastic show called Drops of God on Apple Television. I have no remuneration from them. I just found the program to be very interesting. It's 8 episodes, and there's a lot of wine-based information, wine-based kind of intrigue in the whole show. And so from a blind tasting standpoint, I think you might enjoy that series if you have Apple Television or you want to pay $7 or something like that to get it for a month and watch the 8 episodes that are Drops of God. It is a worthwhile experience from the wine blind tasting side of things. It's pretty neat. So thank you, Veronica, for getting me back on track. And Robert, it is bright golden color, very clean. Yes, I agree with all of that. Tears with persistent legs, so maybe a little bit of a warmer climate, even though, well, they're fast. They hold persistent legs, though. You are right. Wow. So maybe not syrupy, but certainly has a little bit of alcohol to it. With the bright golden color, maybe some sunshine and some warmth. A grape varietal that has a bit of a richer skin. Melon aroma, fantastic. So what other aromas are you picking up? We're looking at like a moderate climate, right? This color and that tearing, that leg formation would indicate probably something more moderate climate as opposed to a purely cool climate. Maybe a cooling element, but I wouldn't say real cold. And that golden color would express sort of some sun-touched grape or a varietal that has a little bit more richness on the skin. Not that we're going to get skin contact here. We'll find out necessarily if there is some, but just a richer varietal, maybe a little bit of oak, perhaps, by way of some of that golden color. We'll have to continue before we get to that point. But that's from the appearance, right? So from the nose, melon, what else do you get? Green apple, melon. So green things. Slight hint of orange zest. Yeah, something sweet and citrusy. Good. Yeast. Fantastic. It's expressive, right? This nose is not faint. It's not hiding. And so it's aromatic. It has an aromatic expression to it that is pretty pronounced. And that's particularly special and unique relative to a wine that is white and is normally chilled, because chilling oftentimes mutes aroma. And so we're through the chill. I'm presuming most of you chilled this. You get aroma. So you're talking about an aromatic varietal. And so something like, for example, Pinot Grigio, which isn't terribly aromatic, it has aroma, but it isn't terribly aromatic. Some Italian white varietals, other white varietals aren't as aromatic. Something on the opposite end of the spectrum, like Torrontés or Gewürztraminer, is an aromatic varietal that is unmistakable. The aromas just burst from the glass, right? This has more of those aroma characteristics than something not like Pinot Grigio, or like a lighter expression on the nose. And so it helps us to kind of begin to think about what varietal this might be. Salty, saline kind of element, nice. Apricot, dried pear. So we're talking about stone fruits, some of them dried. We're talking about melons. We're talking about tree fruit, apple, floral notes, salty notes, yeasty notes. There's savory notes. There's a little funky note to me here that I always have a hard time kind of pinning exactly what it is. I think I oftentimes roll that into a descriptor that I use, which is muskmelon. It has a muskiness to it. I think that might be some of what you're touching on there in the yeast. There's sort of there's a little bit of a spice kind of note here. It's real faint. It's Chinese 5-spice. So star anise and mace kind of blending together a little bit. So that might mean that we have a little bit of oak aging. Maybe it's more neutral. It's not pronounced. We're not getting any real lactic-y notes, are we? Any buttery quality. So it might indicate that we're not talking about malolactic fermentation, but maybe we're seeing a little bit of oak aging. Maybe the oak's larger oak and it's just the vessel, and that's where some of this color is coming from. I don't know. We'll have to taste the wine to kind of verify that, but it's an indication that I think we're right in a moderate climate. We've got a bunch of aroma. We've got a whole host of fruit, some more earthen notes by way of the salty minerality, the wood note maybe in the color, and also in the in the slight spicy notes that we're picking up. So we've looked and smelled, and the smell, we've gone through the fruit, earth, and the wood, the few things. So let's taste this wine. Ooh. Yeah, it's got a lot. It's delightful, isn't it? I don't know, maybe, the 90-ish degree days we've been having in this bright kind of finish with a wonderful mid palate. There's a roundness that's almost creamy, right? So where do you place this wine in terms of its robustness? Is this light? Is it medium? Is it pretty robust? Where do you place the acidity? Low acidity, medium acidity, moderate, or high acidity? And how do you tell? Low acidity after you've finished your sip. Are you still salivating? And if you're salivating, is it going for 5 seconds? Is it going for 10 seconds? Is it going longer than that? And if it's longer than that, you're high acidity. If it's in the sort of middle range, you're moderate. If it's real low or not really, then it's low. And so how long does the acidity last? Is the textural quality, as you've heard us talk about before, skim milk 2% or whole? Sometimes there's a difference between 2 and whole, a combination there. So where do you place that wine? And all those things are going to kind of be reflected back to help us understand what we thought we saw and what we smelled. And so medium to medium plus acidity, yeah, I think that's right. High acidity, Karen, maybe. I don't know if it's not like ripping high, but maybe it's, if you separate the texture away, the acidity is high, but the texture kind of helps temper that a little bit. It's mid-body, yeah. That middle of the experience too. If you created a 3-part play from this wine, the first half is sort of pleasant approach. It's kind of minerally, a little bit citrusy, right? And then the second part is sort of that creaminess where the wine just opens. And then it finishes in more a tapered precision with the acidity just kind of zinging, which is altogether pleasing because it makes you want to have another sip. And the flavor profiles are kind of found all throughout, but mostly in that middle part for me. 3% milk, love it. Yeah, it's got some texture. It's got some weight. So good. So this is, I think, reinforcing what we saw by way of the appearance. The tears formed, they were legs, and they held. So we're talking about a little bit of alcohol here, right? It's a touch warmer. This is not a 10.5%, 11%, 12% light kind of wine. It might be 12.5, 13.5 kind of percent wine. And that will come from a moderate climate where you're going to get some sunshine and you're going to get some warmth in the growing season. But they didn't lose freshness for sure. And so that's probably part of the varietal here, which is going to have a higher level of acidity, generally speaking. And I'm not talking about here as I make this example that I think these varietals are what's in here. But if you think about the context of, say, Viognier or Roussanne, 2 varietals that don't have high acidity. So in single varietal form, they have fantastic aromatics, especially Viognier, but not necessarily high acidity. So if we were to say, I think this is Viognier, the acidity would probably kind of counter our own point there. On the alternate side of the spectrum, right, like something like Chenin Blanc or Riesling would give you high acidity and could potentially be there. I'm not getting the flavor profiles of either of those necessarily, but real high acidity, that these don't necessarily present that rip and acidity straight through, but it could be. I would walk away probably from all 4 of those examples in this context. And so it leaves us in the middle. And with our descriptors, we've got to consider a whole host of grapes because we're in the middle. And so are there any other indicators here that would tell you were going one place versus another? So we touched on fruit. So what fruit do you taste? You get that minerality on this. And then in particular, you're looking at any oak. Are you getting a perception of oak when you taste this wine? Are you picking up on cedar, kind of a corn kernel? Are you getting vanilla or dill? Are you getting spice notes from a toast on the oak barrel? Anything like that? I agree, Johnny. I don't think this is Riesling. No petroleum note, sometimes more tropical notes. The mineral element here is kind of interesting that way. I'm not getting a whole bunch of oak. There's like a little spice on the back end of the palate, sort of the retronasal that just lingers. But what I think might happen here, and I think I'm trying to make a case for a little bit of oak usage by way of neutral used oak. And for those of you that don't know what I mean when I say that, an oak barrel in its first fill, so its first year of being used, imparts a tremendous amount of character to a wine because of the toast that's on the interior of the barrel. And so that adds spices and flavor profile to the wine. It's like adding spices to a sauce. After the first year, you fill it in the second year, and most of the character has been imparted, but not all of it. So the second year barrel fill will give you some character. A third year, much less. And by the third, fourth, certainly fifth year and beyond, depending on how long they use the barrels, you're not imparting flavor, but you sometimes are imparting texture. And the wine breathes a little bit differently than if it was in stainless steel. And so you get a roundness, a richness that comes in. And I think that's here. So I'm thinking maybe we're doing a little bit of neutral barrel, maybe, or some lees stirring. And so you get this quality of that richness and creaminess. And when I say lees stirring, the lees are the yeast cells. We picked up a little bit of that yeasty aroma on the nose. That yeast that's eaten the sugar in the wine or in the grape juice and then turned it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Some of those yeast cells are left in the wine, and the wine is stirred on those spent yeast cells, those dead yeast cells called lees, and that adds a creaminess. It's also a good preservative. So slight bitterness. You guys picked up some notes of melon and what have you, right? And green apple, citrus. First taste did not like, second taste enjoyed a little more. Good. I think that's very interesting because the yeast flavor, a little bit like champagne, Greg. Yeah. So there's also that kind of chalkiness and that yeasty, leesy quality, which is what you're going to get in champagne too. A lot of the times, this wine too, Dean, to your point, my first thought when I poured this in the glass was, is this Sauvignon Blanc? Because it was expressive and aromatic that way. Maybe, and let's put a pin in that. I'll come back to that for a second. And thank you to your comment there, Veronica. Yes, a lot of people who I deal with as a sommelier at their table, when they say I don't like oak, they do like the experience of some oak, but not necessarily all of it. And a lot of times what they're actually referencing is the malolactic fermentation that happens in a wine, less so than the oak. And malolactic gives you that buttery quality. The diacetyl, the movie popcorn kind of butter, is the same thing as the conversion of malic acid to lactic acid that happens in the malolactic fermentation, which is another fermentation that happens in wine and can be arrested or stopped to prevent that kind of flavor profile from happening. And all red wines go through that typically, and then white wines is more of a choice. And so a barrel-aged Chardonnay would go through malolactic fermentation. This wine, I don't think so. I'm not picking up those aromas. Pinot Blanc's a really nice thought. I'm sorry I don't have the bottle, Chris, but if you're playing the bottle game too, this is the shape. This is not a traditional Pinot Blanc shape. The Alsatian bottle would have more of that long, angular slope side. Doesn't mean you couldn't have Pinot Blanc in a bottle like this. This is a Bordeaux-shaped bottle with a high shoulder, and this more sloped kind of Burgundy bottle where you'd find Pinot Noir, for example. It's called a Burgundy bottle. And then you have the high-sided kind of Riesling bottle that you see in various different forms from Alsace to, of course, Germany and beyond. So when I say playing the bottle game, Chris is famous for playing the bottle game and also the price game, which is great. So Greg, picking up on Loire Sauvignon Blanc. It's not grapefruity, it's not grassy, it's not New Zealandy kind of in that regard as a prototypical production. Chardonnay or Chardonnay blend. Yeah, I think that's, you have to consider Chardonnay. When we said green apple and we said melon, we said, you know, those notes, I think you got to kind of think about that. And Chardonnay is one of the most challenging grapes to nail in a blind tasting from place standpoint. It's very easy to just call Chardonnay because Chardonnay could be everything from super tart, bright, vibrant stainless steel made to incredibly rich, sunshine kissed, huge, powerful. So you have a huge range and you're just throwing out Chardonnay. you get less credit in my mind by just saying Chardonnay. But if you can say, I think this is Chablis, then you're talking about something quite different. And so Chardonnay should be in the running. Pinot Blanc, absolutely. Albarino I saw tossed out, and Veronica just, Sarah said that, sorry. And Veronica's just echoing that. Albarino has more of those pear notes, but it can be spritzy and kind of vibrant. I thought we would be, part of my other thought as I was thinking Sauvignon Blanc, I tasted a couple of Vino Verdes today, and they have Luero in it. They have a variety of grapes. They have Albarino or Albarino in that too. That could be, there's no spritz here, so it's not the young version, but it could be more of a more table wine, kind of serious wine. So that Albarino is a good call. So we're looking at textured white wines that have aromatics. And when you kind of spell that out there, would we be getting the same aromatics from Chardonnay? Maybe. The flavor profile is not off, but I think it's more expressive than most Chardonnay that I've tasted. Albarino, cool. That's certainly in the running. Sauvignon Blanc, Loire-ish. So Touraine, something like that. Maybe Sancerre. There's a mineral component to this. Chardonnay Viognier blend. Interesting. Cool. So Virginia, maybe. Virginia plays in a wonderful way a lot of times with Chardonnay and Viognier and Petit Maussangs, or a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc and Riesling blended in with Chardonnay and Viognier. And I like Chardonnay and Viognier blended here. I mean, I think they complement each other in terms of the Chardonnay can be picked a little bit early, perhaps, and giving you a little bit more high acid and some texture, and the Viognier giving the aromatics. That's a nice call. You'd get, I think, more of that sort of honeysuckle element, that sort of apricot peachy note, which we did pick up a little bit of apricot earlier, right? So I think you could make a compelling case for a Chardonnay Viognier blend from Virginia. And wouldn't that be awesome? That'd be a killer blind tasting right there, where you're just saying, I think it's a Chardonnay Viognier blend from Virginia. Like, phew, that's amazing. Is there enough acidity in that blend, Viognier being a little bit lighter, if a Chardonnay had that kind of quality, and you would get maybe green apple from that, and you'd get some of that melon from that Chardonnay, maybe that's possible. I'm not so sure about the saline part that Sarah's just thrown out now. Dean, yeah, Albarino can certainly be more on the lighter side. This has a little bit more richness. We have an Albarino here that we carry that is lees stirred, old neutral oak, that gives you a little bit more richness, and they hold it back for a little longer. They don't release it as fast, so it gains some texture. That's kind of what I'm thinking. You're not going to get quite the same saline kind of mineral thing there. Veronica, to your question, I think that's a good one. Do white wines change as much as, say, red wines? And usually at our 20-minute mark, these wines kind of take a marked turn and begin to open in a way that's more pronounced. This hasn't done that for me either. But let's pour a little bit more and see. Straightforward whites don't necessarily. Matt Fitzsimmons, a Jake Bushing Albarino. That's cool. Very cool. Jake makes really lovely textured wines that have great acidity too. He does a wonderful job of kind of balancing textural richness and freshness, ripeness and freshness. So Taylor, thank you for that. We're thinking New World. So a New World wine, as we were talking about in the Virginia context. So some of that sunshine, some of that ripeness. I'm trying to puzzle where we would get a little bit of maybe neutral oak too. There's sort of like a shrimp boil, crustacean kind of note now. Like I want to be eating this with a crab boil, with a big table laid out with newspaper on it, and a bunch of blue crabs and a little hint of Old Bay. Not enough to like make your mouth burn, but enough to where you get a little hint of that spice, and you've got the corn and the potatoes and that wonderful, sweet, rich meat. I would want to eat that with this. Okay. No, going back to your point, Veronica, it hasn't changed much for me. The texture maybe is melding a little bit more. So that 3-part play is sort of becoming more one act as part of it, as opposed to 3 acts. It's kind of melding all together. It's not quite as separated. So it's had a time to knit together. I think we did a crab fest once for our membership club, our Hestia Guild members, and that was a blast. Maybe it was actually more shrimp, but we did some crabs there too. That'd be fun. A Maryland stint, that might be interesting too. We take field in Maine to sea in Maine, and we go to the sea. That would be pretty good. All right, more New World than Old World. Pinot Blanc, Chardonnay blend, Sauvignon Blanc being more Old World, as we were calling it. Yeah, maybe a little bit of neutral oak. I like the Albarino call. I like the Chardonnay Viognier call. Yes, Chris, tons of wine and beer at such an affair. Absolutely. Chilled wine that's sweating while you're sweating. Like nothing really beats like you're hunching your back because you don't want to get all the crab juice all over you. And you're dripping sweat and it's just rolling down your back, kind of like, that roller coaster. You're getting to the top of it, then it just makes it point to the curve and then makes it all the way down. So, yeah, tremendous. Pinot Gris, Chris, we covered a little bit earlier. I think doesn't have quite the same expressive quality as the amount of aromatics that we're finding in this. So a little less likely to find it to be Pinot Gris, but texturally, the Pinot Blanc part, I think it could be there. It's not as lemony. It has citrus notes, but it's not just kind of as that beautiful, pure kind of lemony quality. And it has a bit more density than I would expect from Pinot Blanc. Not that it couldn't get there, but it's just, I think that sways me from that. I don't think we're in the Rhone, for example. I don't think we're in Chenin Blanc territory. Oh, thank you for the suggestion, Greg. No, you can get away from F&M too. We're closed 3 nights a week. You got to go eat somewhere else. Portuguese American Grill and a Manassas. Oh, very cool. I'm loving that. Odd Portuguese wines. Yeah, I think I tasted a whole host of them today, like I was saying, from Vinho Verde, where there was texture there. There's the grapes of Alvarinhos, or Albarino and Loero being 2 principal ones. And there's a quality about this that's similar. So, and that would explain some of that kind of coastal saline mineral note. Lees stirring, giving you a little bit of texture. So I think I'm less Sauvignon Blanc. I'm more there than I was. Initially, I was thinking, oh gosh, this might be Sauvignon Blanc. But oak element 2. What else would we consider? Well, with Sauvignon Blanc and oak, the Sauvignon Blanc and oak right off the bat is Bordeaux and sort of entre deux mer, kind of dealing with Grave, kind of fun, neutral oak aged Sauvignon Blanc with Semillon. We've talked about that before too. South Africa could have that. So, Taylor's saying Chardonnay Sauvignon Blanc blend California 2021. Nice. Sauvignon Blanc USA 2020 from Taylor, from Johnny, excuse me. Yeah, cool. USA Sauvignon Blanc. There's plenty of room for that too, where you've got a riper expression of Sauvignon Blanc with a little bit of maybe oak, maybe not, but no malolactic fermentation. South African Sauv Blanc 2020 for Kristen. Yeah, great guys. Those are viable. So is the Viognier Chardonnay call from Virginia. So is the Albarino or Albarino Spain, Albarino in Portugal, kind of all close to each other. The northern part of Portugal, the very northwestern part of Spain, the As much as I like the Viognier Chardonnay call, that vibrant acidity, I think puts me, yeah, maybe I'm gonna go on the Portuguese track, and I'll say Alvarinho, Portugal, 2020, 2021, fresher, newer, with a little bit of texture. So, all right, Portuguese white for me, New World white for some of you, Sauvignon Blanc. Put your flag, plant it, make note of it, and let's find out. Here we go. It's got a clear bottle, so definitely kind of a fun, fresh white. It's got, oh, how cool is that? This is Virginia, Boxwood, our friends down the road, Sauvignon Gris. That's very cool. 80% Sauvignon Gris, 20% Sauvignon Blanc, so it is a blend. Sauvignon Gris, giving you a little bit more color and texture. How cool is that? Oh, that's fun. That's really funny. It's funny, especially funny because Mark from over at Boxwood today dropped by a sample of this because I was talking to Rachel Martin. Rachel and her brother run Boxwood and ran Boxwood. Rachel now runs Oceano, which makes beautiful California Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And she said, "Did you try the Sauvignon Gris?" And I had tried it before when they had just released it, but not this vintage. And they brought over a sample today. And Julie walks by and goes, "Why did they drop that off?" And I was like, "Well, I was talking to Mark about it and also to Rachel. They must have dropped a sample off." I didn't know she bought this. And it was today that we get a chance to try it. Oh, that's so cool. So really neat, right? So close in the family of Sauvignon Blanc. And there is Sauvignon Blanc here, but not the same. And does it say anything about whether it's solid or neutral oak? It doesn't. Stainless steel tanks. So hand harvested, hand sorted, and fermented in stainless steel tanks. So that texture is just really all about the Sauvignon Gris, which is really neat. What a nice way to kind of experience Sauvignon Blanc with its cousin or brother grape, sister grape, Sauvignon Gris. That this is a wine that you certainly could drink in the summertime, but it has a little bit more intensity, a little bit more weight and body that gives it, I think, a little bit more versatility. That's very cool. Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's no way we should feel bad about this, Dean. How would you know, or how would you guess Sauvignon Gris? Now we can. When we have a sense, like if you're thinking Sauvignon Blanc, but it has a little bit more texture and richness, then you go to Sauvignon Gris. It's a nice wine. This is really fun. I appreciate that, Dean. Yes, Julie's a wonderfully nice person. And her job here in this case is to find wines that will stump us a little bit as we learn something. We do have another bottle to share, Matthew, yes. And we have a few more bottles here of this wine. I don't think this will be the last time that we feature this wine. Probably the last time in the mystery set context here, but we will absolutely play with this wine going forward here at Field & Main. It's wonderful, super delightful. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for another great Thursday night. I look forward to these so much and enjoy the opportunity to spend time with you and cap off my Thursdays with a blind wine tasting experience that is quite special to me, and I know a number of you too as well. We were talking with a couple guests the other night, and they were saying how they shared this experience with other friends, and they've come to enjoy it. And I thank you for doing that. It means a lot to me, and it means that we've got another person added to a growing community of people who enjoy having experiences, enjoy connecting over wine. So until we get a chance to do that again, be well. Enjoy the start of fall-ish, as we'll get to our next wine just before that. But until then, I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you here at the restaurant. Cheers.